Over the past months, we spent our time rolling d20s, battling goblins, and casting spells in our quest to save a magical unicorn from the big bad known only as the Dragon Lord. No, this isn't a D&D campaign, as there's one clear difference: guns, and lots of them. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is the latest game in the tried and true Borderlands franchise, a franchise that has for better or worse remained largely the same year after year. But then we got Wonderlands, swapping the post-apocalypse for fantasy, grenades for spells, and you even get to make your own character as you adventure with 3 other friends. Is that enough to shake up the franchise? We're here as the Co-op Bros to answer that question, and more importantly, see if it's got what it takes to be a great co-op game for you and your best friends.
Double spin,
baby!
Double spin!
Oh my god! I was gonna say cheese to all your fans. Cheese. Yeah. No! What? Yeah. Oh, I should have broken it.
Oh, the Breath of the Wild Ring moment.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's just a...
Womp, womp, womp.
Tiny Tina's and the Borderlands series as a whole is something of an anomaly in modern co-op. Not only does it make playing together easy, it gives you every option to choose from. It's not very common to say a game has online and local co-op, but it's even less common to say there is combo co-op. Yes, that elusive beast is finally showing its head here. You can play with a partner in split screen and with your friends online at the same time. You love to see it. Now the boys here only played online, so let me talk about that experience. It was very easy to hook up in the menu system pre-game and throughout our time playing. No issues there. It was also super easy to start up our campaign and play from the start together. No issues there. But the netcode for Tiny Tina's is where things get a little bit fishy. Yeah, it was a little bit too good to be true, wasn't it? We had several instances of significant lag, rubber banding, and even some straight up disconnections. It was pretty frustrating and unfortunately very consistent throughout our playthrough. And from what we can tell by looking on some forums online, we weren't the only ones. Notably, it mostly affected my boy Gabe, and he'll tell you when it was happening it significantly took away from his enjoyment of the game. But we don't think it was his internet alone causing the issue, as both he and I were playing other games together online at the same time and facing zero issues. So keep that in mind. The network health of the game is a little less than stable, your mileage will vary. Also, a couple pro tips. The default settings in Tiny Tina are just totally whack. They made some weird choices. So you might want to fix your field of view, turn off the head sway, turn off the controller vibration, and switch the controls around if you value melee like I did. R3 was not the greatest choice on that one, Gearbox. Okay, pro tip over, let's get back to the review.
I'm going for Leroy!
Oh, nice, worth, and he goes down. Worth it, dude. Worth it.
Wonderlands starts the same way as every Borderlands game before it, by choosing your character, or in this case, creating it from scratch. You have way more freedom than previous games as there's actually RPG stats in this one, which should of course match up with the class you choose. The 6 classes to choose from are Berserker, Clawbringer, Graveborn, Spellshot, Spore Warden, and Stabomancer. Yeah, okay, remember, Tiny Tina came up with these names. Additionally, during your playthrough, you'll get to pick a second class, or multi-class for my fellow D&D nerds. This gives you an additional skill tree and access to 2 more abilities, and we'll dive into the good and bad of the system in a bit. After a short intro and a load of exposition for good measure, you'll be dumped into the new overworld. Over the course of the 15-hour campaign, you'll traverse this tabletop-esque board to get to the main missions of the game. But that's not all. The overworld is host to various NPCs, random encounters, dungeons, and side missions should you want to break from the main path. The overall content was initially amusing, but as time went on, we found most of the activities pretty bare bone, honestly. We did most of the notable side missions, which were okay. With all that out of the way though, the gameplay loop of Wonderlands should look fairly familiar if you've played a Borderlands game before. You'll enter a mission, fight through hordes of enemies, pick up countless items, sell the ones you don't like, fight, loot, sell, rinse and repeat until you face a big boss, and move on to the next area of the overworld. It's all a bit simple, but there's pros and cons to that of course.
I've got to start off at the top here and give Tiny Tina some credit. It's a game clearly made with the best of intentions for you and your friends. As I mentioned earlier, right away you can start the campaign together, you can create your customized characters together, and even go through the tutorial together. This is especially nice during the class choices as you can discuss your roles early on. The roles are clearly carved out and straightforward. You got tanks, mages, rogues, all of that stuff. So even before playing, you can start to think of how your party should probably be best set up. There are other basic quality of life features that complete the package. During missions, anyone can move the story forward while the rest of the crew goofs off in the background, or in our case, finds hidden D20 dice. Jake.
D20! Oh, dang it. No!
Get here!
Jake.
Mine!
And a D20! Dang it!
Like,
I see it.
dang it.
You're the hero. Dude.
There's the ability to trade items that suit your buddy's class better than yours, and a convenient ping system. Look, her voice may be grating, but Tina and the team have thought of it all in terms of those smaller co-op mechanics that you all like to have. One of the biggest departures from previous titles from a co-op perspective is the change to classes. Here, as opposed to picking 4 preset classes and characters, you can create your own character and choose from 6 classes. And as Gabe already described, about halfway through the campaign you can multi-class and add on a second class. Now this comes with some pros and cons, with the cons outweighing the pros, but I'll talk about its merits for now. Going into the game, I wanted to try a melee build, and by choosing the Berserker class, looking for some items that increase melee damage, and choosing complementary skills on my skill tree, I did exactly that. Every item you find is clearly going to be for your build or not for your build, so for example, I would prioritize anything that increased my melee speed, or melee crit chance, or melee crit damage, and each piece of armor in my build felt like it was contributing to the cause. During battle, I had smacked that spinning skill and watched the numbers fly. So even early on, I felt like I was a successful melee build, swinging that axe, making my presence known, tank stuff. Gabe, on the other hand, wanted to make a spellcasting build, and he was doing that within the first hour using his skills and items. Jake focused on speed, and well, I'll let the tape speak for itself.
I gave you a head start.
Oh my god. I'm mid.
Holy
Oh, there it goes.
Why
No.
is he so fast? Oh my gosh.
Not even close, dude.
All of that is cool, but the cool factor quickly wore off for all of us.
He respects himself, so he respects himself.
I love
That's what I say.
Oh my god. There
You,
we go.
you basically could have overlapped me.
One of the biggest disappointments in this game is how quickly your class ends up feeling one note. The cool factor definitely fades fast. I get that the team at Gearbox took a chance on this create your own character system, but unfortunately they rolled a 5. It definitely falls short. While yes, it offers up a ton of freedom, it ironically means losing a lot of distinctiveness. Ideally in a co-op game like this, you want everyone's characters to shine and stand out. That way you can have a great team composition and create synergies. But in Wonderlands, our characters ended up feeling more similar than we would have liked. If everyone can use spells, my spellshot class ends up feeling significantly less, well, special. Same goes for melee weapons, which are best suited for Andrew's class, but it's not like everyone else wasn't using them. So there was a real chance for the abilities to be the thing that help you stand out, to be these epic moments the way they were in past Borderlands games. Like in Borderlands 3, you could spawn a mech, summon a giant spectral fist, or even clone yourself depending on which character you played. The abilities in Wonderlands, they just don't feel nearly as impactful. The Berserker class has a melee spin move, the Stablemancer summons a spinning blade, and my Spellshot's best ability is that I can have 2 spell slots. You see what I mean? They're just fine, not nearly as flashy as past titles. You'd think after you get your multi-class you'd really start to stand out, but that doesn't quite pan out either. Ideally, you want to try and finish your first skill tree to really reap the benefits of that original class. Everyone knows the best skills are often found at the end of the skill tree, of course. So take for example my last spellshot skill. It's called Sever the Thread, and it resets all my spell cooldowns on gun crits. I mean, that's pretty wild and makes it really hard for me to want to invest in my other skill tree. Not to mention how it's a whole different playstyle. So this whole multi-class system was a big selling point for us. We thought it would be a huge opportunity for some dope build diversity. So it was a big bummer that it plays such a small role in the game. Speaking of roles, even though there appears to be clearly defined roles found in the classes here, like Andrew's Berserker being best suited for being a beefy tank, they don't go far enough. In the end, my spell shot character was honestly mostly fine in the front lines. And aside from spell cooldowns, I also ended up speccing into strength and dexterity for the crit damage, just like Andrew and Jake's characters. As such, aside from Andrew being our tank, there is less room for us to define our roles in the party and no need to come up with any sort of co-op strategies. But honestly, the action in this game requires very little cooperation to begin with. Yes, it retains that chaotic Borderlands feel, but because of everything I just mentioned, it feels very unengaging. As a spin-off title, I wish they would have taken the opportunity to further shake things up, like adding objectives during main missions. At least that would have forced us to communicate more rather than just being on autopilot. It's funny because the endgame Chaos Chambers actually has objectives, but whatever. I guess even without objectives, the game could have been engaging through pure challenge and difficulty, but Gearbox rolled a 1 on that one. Critical failure, my dudes. The default difficulty is Child's Play in 4 players, and even after we bumped it up to the hardest difficulty, we were still clearing bosses with little effort. Basically, the difficulty scaling in co-op is totally broken. So look, Wonderlands has a lot of building blocks in terms of co-op mechanics, but unfortunately, they all start to fall apart and can't quite sustain you through the 15 or so hours of the campaign.
To get straight to the point, we did not have a ton of fun playing Tiny Tina's. Altogether, the game's systems just felt very unengaging, and that's due to all the reasons Gabe mentioned earlier. Classes don't feel distinct, there are literally no objectives outside of clear the area, and the difficulty balancing is truly awful. Bosses would be down in like less than a minute, and I'm really not exaggerating there. One really weird oddity that contributed to our autopilot was the death save mechanic. If you go down, you can revive yourself by downing an enemy. This was significantly easier than having a teammate revive you, which has an oddly long timer, so again, there just wasn't a need to communicate during a battle. Sometimes it felt like I was almost playing in solo. And all of that is even more disappointing considering Gearbox did improve on the Borderlands formula in some ways. The D&D setting does a lot of heavy lifting here. The art direction is really impressive. The developers were able to paint in colors outside of Desert Brown, and man did they take advantage of it. Even minor side quest areas had really interesting mini worlds to look at. Take this beanstalk level you've probably seen in previous footage. This is just a side quest, guys. I mean, the side quest itself is average at best, but dang, you did not have to go so hard on a side quest. Plus, the writing and performances feel more at home in a goofy, over-the-top fantasy world. The Dragon Lord, Tina, and all her friends were genuinely funny at times. And oddly enough, our favorite activity was finding D20 dice sprinkled throughout the game. I mean, it's not great that our favorite part of the game was a tiny side activity, but hey, thanks to the D&D setting, we had something to strive for, because trust me, the game does not challenge you otherwise.
You gotta go. 20! Hey! Let's go, dude. Let's go, baby. And I see a perp.
But despite these positives the D&D 7 gives, it can't lift the game. It's a classic 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And not to beat a dead horse, or in this case, butt stallion, but the network issues and lack of difficulty really are the nails in the coffin for us. You don't hear us say it often, but yeah, we didn't have too much fun here.
Get the crap out of here! I got it, bro. I got it, bro. No, I totally clicked it, bro. No way, bro. You were sitting down emoting, bro. Don't even try. You got it. Oh my.
Well, as we always say, just because we didn't have fun doesn't necessarily mean you and your friends won't. I think we had different expectations for Wonderlands. We liked Borderlands 3, but we wanted this spin-off to really shake things up. We've played a ton of looter shooters. I'm talking Division, Destiny, Outriders, Borderlands 3, obviously Division 2, Destiny 2. We like this genre. But if you're just looking for a straightforward looter shooter, just a game to shoot some goblins and chat with your friends, Tiny Tina's may satisfy that itch, especially if you're into Dungeons & Dragons and fantasy as a whole. It's actually really amusing and funny all the ways this game pokes fun of those things. The writing really is a massive improvement over Borderlands 3. Ultimately, Gearbox took a gamble on this game. They rolled their dice and tried something different. The result wasn't a critical failure, but it also wasn't a critical success. It didn't quite work for us, but who knows, maybe they can take the best parts of this game and improve on them for a follow-up.
Thanks as always guys for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you enjoyed the video, we'd appreciate your support in any of those ways. We're working on a lot right now before our summer vacations kick in, so stay tuned to our socials to keep up to date. This week we'll be streaming both Salt and Sacrifice and Evil Dead the Game right here on the channel, so come check it out. We'll catch you guys next time on the next episode of the Co-op Bros.
Face me, Andrew. I don't see it. You, the boy who lives. I'm gonna get. What happened? Your thing broke a barrel.
I meleeed a barrel.
Oh, dude, that's hilarious. Oh my god.
When did you arrest me, damn it?
Peace out.
That was good, dude. That was
Oh
good.
my god.